bow. "Why are you staring in surprise, cowboy? Don't you remember me? I'm your childhood love." The morning sun was just beginning to rise over the small town, painting the sky with soft streaks of pink and gold. The air was crisp and carried the faint smell of hay and earth from the nearby ranches. Birds chirped lazily, announcing the start of another day in the quiet town that seemed frozen in time. In the distance, the sound of hooves striking the dusty road grew louder, announcing the approach of someone familiar to this land. It was the cowboy, a man who had spent most of his life tending to the land, caring for animals, and moving through life with a steady, calm routine. He was a man of few words, with hands roughened by hard work and eyes that held a mixture of kindness and sadness. He walked through the town square, tipping his worn-out hat at neighbors and familiar shopkeepers, who greeted him warmly. Life in this town had its rhythms, and he was deeply woven into them. Children ran past him laughing as a scent of freshly baked bread wafted from the small bakery on the corner. The cowboy smiled faintly, remembering the days when he too had run freely through these streets, carefree and full of dreams. But today his mind was elsewhere. His thoughts wandered to the routine tasks he had yet to complete at the ranch, the fences that needed fixing, and the animals that required attention. Life was simple, predictable, and yet comforting in its consistency. As he made his way toward the town fair, something unusual caught his eye. Among the crowd of people moving about, there was a figure that seemed familiar, someone whose presence stirred a memory he had long buried. His steps slowed, and his hand instinctively went to his hat as if to steady himself. His pine. The crowd seemed to blur, and for a moment it felt as though time itself had paused. His heart skipped a beat, and a rush of memories flooded his mind. The laughter of a young girl, the sparkle of her eyes, the way she had once held his hand tightly during a summer storm. It all came rushing back. She was standing near the edge of the fair, looking around with curiosity and a gentle smile on her face. The sun caught her hair, giving it a soft glow, and he could see the familiar warmth in her eyes. She was no longer the little girl who had run through the fields beside him. Bask. She had grown into a woman, graceful and confident, yet there was something in her gaze that spoke of the same innocence and kindness he remembered from childhood. He felt a strange mix of emotions: disbelief, joy, nervousness, and a sense of longing he hadn't realized he still carried. He stopped in his tracks, unsure if he should approach or simply watch from afar. Memories of their childhood came rushing back, vivid and clear. He remembered the summers they had spent exploring the woods behind their homes, building forts from fallen branches, and sharing secrets that only children could understand. He remembered how she had always been brave, climbing the tallest trees and daring him to follow. They had shared dreams of adventure, promising each other that no matter where life took them, they would always remain friends. But life had other plans. Families had moved, paths had diverged, and years passed without contact. The cowboy's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. Could it really be her? Was this some trick of memory, or had fate truly brought them back together after all these years? His heart pounded in his chest as he took a cautious step forward. She turned at that moment as if sensing his presence, and their eyes met. There was a flicker of recognition in her gaze, a spark that ignited something deep within him. Bray. Her smile widened, and she spoke, her voice soft but carrying an unmistakable familiarity. "Why are you staring in surprise, cowboy? Don't you remember me? I'm your childhood love." The words hit him like a gentle wave washing over him with warmth and shock. He blinked, trying to process what he had just heard. Her voice was exactly as he remembered it, though now richer and more mature. The childhood memories collided with the present reality, and he felt a surge of emotions he hadn't felt in years. Excitement, disbelief, nostalgia, and a hint of fear mingled within him. He wanted to speak, to ask questions, to make sense of this unexpected reunion. But for a moment he could only stand there, rooted to the spot. She took a step closer, her eyes searching his face as if looking for signs of the boy she once knew. He noticed the subtle changes, the way she carried herself, the confidence in her posture, the quiet strength in her gaze. Yet beneath it all there was a familiar softness, a gentleness that reminded him of the girl who had once shared his childhood dreams. He felt a warmth spread through his chest, a mixture of happiness and longing. It was as if a chapter of his life that had been paused long ago was suddenly reopening, inviting him to step back in. The cowboy finally found his voice, though it came out shakier than he intended. "Hi. I can't believe it. Is it really you?" She laughed softly, a sound that brought back memories of carefree days. "Brr. Yes, it's me. I never forgot you." He took another step forward, closer now, his eyes never leaving hers. The crowd around them seemed to fade into the background, leaving only the two of them in a bubble of shared memories and unspoken emotions. He could see the same spark in her eyes that he had admired as a boy, and he felt a pull he couldn't resist. "After all these years, how did you find me?" he asked, his voice filled with wonder and curiosity. She shrugged lightly, a playful smile on her lips. "Some things are just meant to be, I guess. I never stopped thinking about you, wondering how life was treating you. Barish. And today, when I returned to this town, I saw you. I knew it was time to say hello." The cowboy felt a lump in his throat. He had spent years wondering about the paths life had taken them on, imagining what she might be doing, and now here she was, standing in front of him as if no time had passed at all. The years of separation, the uncertainties, and the distance melted away in an instant, replaced by the warmth of familiarity and connection. They began walking together through the fair, side by side, as if they were reclaiming a lost part of their childhood, despair. The sounds of laughter, music, and the occasional bark of a vendor's dog filled the air, but the cowboy felt as though they were alone in their own world. They spoke of simple things at first, the changes in the town, the fair itself, the people they both knew, but with each word, the memories of their shared past came alive. He remembered the little adventures they had, like the time they had gotten lost in the woods and had to find their way back, laughing and helping each other along the way. He remembered the time she had taught him to climb a tree to see the sunset from a better view, and the countless hours they had spent talking about dreams that seemed so big and impossible at the time. Now, as adults, they shared stories of their separate lives, filling in the gaps of the years they had missed. As they walked, the cowboy felt a mixture of joy and nervousness. There was so much to say, so much to catch up on, yet he didn't want to rush. He wanted to savor this moment, to let the memories wash over them both slowly. He realized that this unexpected reunion was not just a chance to reconnect, but also an opportunity to reflect on who they had become and what they still meant to each other. The morning passed quickly, unnoticed by either of them. They stopped at a small bench near the edge of the fair, sitting side by side watching children run past and listening to the distant sounds of laughter and music. The cowboy felt a sense of peace he hadn't realized he had been missing. For the first time in years, he felt truly seen, truly understood, and truly alive in the presence of someone who had known him at his most innocent, and who now stood beside him as an adult, carrying the same spark of connection. By the time the sun had climbed higher in the sky, the cowboy knew that this encounter was no accident. It was a gift, a second chance, and perhaps the beginning of something new. As he looked at her, he realized that some bonds, no matter how much time passes or distance separates them, can never truly be broken. Childhood love, once planted, has a way of enduring, waiting for the right moment to bloom again. And as they sat there sharing stories and laughter, the cowboy felt a quiet hope stirring within him. A hope that this unexpected reunion might just be the start of a journey neither of them could have imagined, yet both had always secretly dreamed of.
After their initial meeting at the fair, the cowboy and his childhood love decided to take a quiet walk through the outskirts of town. The sun was warm on their faces, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of wildflowers and fresh grass.
It was the kind of day that reminded one of simpler times, the kind of day that made memories feel alive. The cowboy could hardly believe that she was actually here, standing beside him, speaking to him, just like old times. It felt surreal, yet comforting. As they walked along the old dirt road that led toward the hills, they began to talk about their childhood. She laughed softly, her eyes sparkling as she recounted stories that the cowboy had almost forgotten. "Do you remember the old tree by Miller's Field?" she asked. "The one where we used to sit for hours and plan adventures that never happened?" The cowboy smiled, feeling warmth spread through his chest. He could see the tree clearly in his mind, its wide branches, the rough bark, the way sunlight filtered through the leaves, and how they had made it their secret hideout. "How could I forget?" he replied. "We spent entire summers there, dreaming of a world beyond this town." She nodded, a hint of nostalgia in her eyes. "I used to think we'd travel everywhere together, see mountains, rivers, and oceans. We had big dreams, didn't we? I remember promising you that we'd always stay friends, no matter what."
I reached out lightly and touched his arm. The gesture was simple, but it carried the weight of years apart and memories shared.
"And we did, in our own way," she said. "Even if life separated us, I never stopped thinking about you."
For a moment, silence settled between them, comfortable and reflective.
The cowboy could feel his heart beating faster, a mixture of joy, surprise, and a hint of sadness for the years lost. There were so many questions he wanted to ask her, so many things he wanted to know. Yet he also wanted to savor this moment, to let the memories flow naturally. She spoke again, her voice gentle but filled with emotion. "I moved to another city when I was 12. My family had to leave for my father's work. I tried to keep in touch, but letters got lost, and then life just happened. Beck, I often wondered if you were happy, if you were still the same kind boy I used to know." The cowboy nodded, feeling a lump in his throat. "I stayed here mostly. Ranch work, family responsibilities." Breath. Life didn't leave much room for anything else. But I thought about you often.
"I wondered where you were, what you were doing."
They continued walking, the town slowly fading behind them as they entered a more open area, fields stretching out on either side. The horizon was wide and endless, much like the future they once imagined together as children. They shared stories of the years apart, discovering both similarities and differences in their journeys. She spoke of her studies, her work, and the challenges she faced living in a big city. He shared tales of the ranch, the hard work, and the small joys that came from a life closely connected to nature. Despite the differences in their experiences, there was an undeniable bond between them, a thread that had never been broken. Every laugh, every shared memory, every glance reminded them of the closeness they had once shared and the comfort it brought. At one point, they came across a small pond where they had once skipped stones as children. She knelt down and picked up a flat, smooth rock. "Do you remember how we used to compete to see who could make the stone skip the farthest?" she asked, smiling. He chuckled, crouching beside her. "I always let you win," he admitted. "But I didn't mind losing if it made you happy. Her eyes softened. I remember. You were always kind and patient with me. That never changed, did it? No, he said firmly, feeling the truth of his words in his chest. Some things don't change. They spent time at the pond, skipping stones and laughing as if no time had passed at all. The simplicity of the moment, the connection they shared, and the nostalgia of childhood all blended together, creating a feeling that was both comforting and exhilarating. As the day progressed, they found themselves sitting under the shade of a large oak tree, its branches spreading wide and protective over them. She leaned back against the trunk, letting the sunlight warm her face. I've always wondered, she said softly, what it would have been like if we hadn't been separated. Would we have stayed close? Would we have grown up together? The cowboy thought for a moment, the memories of their shared past and the reality of their present mingling in his mind. I don't know, he admitted. Life has a way of taking us on paths we never expect, but seeing you again, being here with you now, it feels like some part of that dream never really ended. She smiled, reaching out to touch his hand lightly. The gesture was filled with unspoken meaning, a connection that had survived time, distance, and change. Maybe some dreams are meant to wait, she said. Maybe they come back to us when the time is right. They sat there for a long while, talking about hopes, fears, and the lessons they had learned along the way. She shared stories of friendships made and lost, of challenges faced alone, and of the small victories that had shaped her into the person she was. He shared his experiences on the ranch, the hardships of daily life, and the satisfaction of a job well done. Each story, each memory, each laugh, and each silence drew them closer, rekindling a connection that neither of them had realized they still carried. As the afternoon sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the fields, they began to walk back toward town. The world felt different now, as if the reunion had shifted something deep inside them. The cowboy felt a warmth in his heart he hadn't felt in years, a sense of hope and possibility that had been missing from his life. She walked beside him, her presence comforting and familiar, yet also exciting in a way that made him feel alive. They paused near the edge of the town where the old train tracks ran parallel to the main road. The train tracks had always fascinated them as children, representing adventure, journeys, and the unknown. She looked down at the tracks, her eyes reflecting both nostalgia and curiosity. Do you ever wonder where life would have taken us if we had followed our childhood dreams? She asked. He smiled, thinking of the countless times they had imagined traveling, exploring new places, and facing adventures together.
I think about it sometimes, he admitted. But maybe the important thing is that we're here now.
Maybe it's never too late to chase new dreams, together or apart. She nodded, her smile gentle and understanding. You're right. Life doesn't always go the way we plan, but it does bring people and moments back to us when we need them the most. Ping. As the evening settled in, painting the sky with hues of orange, pink, and purple, they realized that their time together had passed quickly, yet it felt like no time had passed at all. They had shared laughter, tears, memories, and dreams, reconnecting in a way that was both comforting and profound. The bond they had formed as children had not only survived but had grown stronger, deepened by the experiences of their separate lives. Before parting ways for the night, they stood by the fairground, looking at each other with a mixture of hope, curiosity, and longing. The cowboy knew that this reunion was only the beginning, that there were still questions to answer and decisions to make. She knew it too, but there was comfort in knowing that the connection they shared had endured. Tomorrow, she said softly, We can meet again, walk, and talk some more. There's so much to catch up on. He nodded, a gentle smile on his face.
I'll be here. I don't want to miss another moment with you. And with that promise, they went their separate ways for the night, hearts full, minds racing with memories, and a shared understanding that something rare and precious had returned to their lives.
The cowboy walked home under the stars, the night air cool against his face, thinking about the girl who had returned to him after all these years. He realized that some connections are timeless, and some loves, no matter how distant, never truly fade. That night he lay awake, replaying their conversations, their laughter, and their shared memories. Birth. The world outside was quiet, but inside, his mind was alive with possibilities. Could this reunion be the start of a new chapter in their lives? Could the dreams of childhood, long set aside, find a way to blossom again in adulthood? He didn't have the answers yet, but one thing was certain. Seeing her, talking to her, and reconnecting had stirred something within him that he could not ignore. It was a feeling of hope, warmth, and possibility that promised new beginnings, no matter what the future held. And somewhere, under the same starry sky, she too lay awake, thinking of him, smiling at the thought of their shared past, and wondering what the coming days might bring. Both of them, separated by time but united by memory and emotion, drifted into sleep with hearts full of anticipation, ready to explore the next chapter of a story that had begun long ago, when they were just children dreaming under the summer sun. Birth. The next morning the town seemed to wake differently for the cowboy. The sunlight filtered through the windows of his small home with a golden glow. But it wasn't just the dawn that made him feel alive. It was the thought of her, the girl who had returned after so many years, whose laughter, warmth, and gentle presence had stirred memories he had thought were long buried. Today was another chance, another day to reconnect, and he could hardly wait. He saddled his horse and rode slowly toward the town center, where they had agreed to meet. The streets were familiar, lined with shops and homes that had barely changed over the years. He waved to a few neighbors, feeling a strange lightness in his step. Normally his rides were routine, filled with chores or errands. Today they were filled with anticipation, with curiosity, and with the hope of rediscovering something precious. When he arrived at the small coffee shop by the town square, she was already there, seated at a corner table, her hands wrapped around a steaming cup of tea. She looked up as he entered, and her face lit up with a smile that seemed to make the entire room warmer. The cowboy dismounted, tying his horse to a post outside, and walked toward her. Each step felt like both a return and a new beginning. "Good morning," she said softly, her eyes sparkling with warmth. "Good morning," he replied, a smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "I hope I'm not keeping you waiting." "Not at all," she said. "I was just enjoying the morning. It feels nice to be back here, and even nicer to see you." They ordered breakfast together and talked casually at first, about the weather, the small changes in town, and the familiar faces they recognized from their childhood. Yet beneath the surface there was a quiet intensity. Every glance, every word, carried memories of years apart, of unspoken feelings, and of a bond that had never truly faded. After breakfast, they decided to take a walk through the town's outskirts again. This time, there was no rush, no schedule, just the freedom to explore and reconnect. They passed by the river where they had once played, tossing pebbles and laughing as they tried to make the stones skip across the water. She bent down and picked up a small, smooth stone, tossing it lightly into the river. "Do you remember how we used to compete to see who could skip the stones the farthest?" she asked, her eyes twinkling. "I remember," he said, crouching beside her. "And I always let you win." She laughed, a sound that reminded him of summer afternoons long ago.
You didn't have to. I liked winning, but I liked that you were always kind more.
Bay. For a while they stood by the river, watching the water flow, talking about the past, the present, and the uncertain future. They shared stories of their teenage years, of challenges they had faced growing up, and of the people who had influenced them along the way. Wraith. She spoke of friendships formed and lost, of successes and disappointments, and of the lessons that had shaped her into the woman she had become. The cowboy shared his experiences working on the ranch, the satisfaction of living close to nature, and the struggles that had come with responsibilities and time. There was laughter, of course, as memories of childhood antics resurfaced. She remembered the time he had climbed a tree to rescue a kitten and ended up stuck until someone helped him down. He recalled the way she had painted a mural on the barn door and how proud she had been when it was finished. Each story reminded them of the bond they had shared, a bond that had survived the years and distance between them. As the afternoon wore on, the conversation grew deeper, more personal. She
Asked him about his dreams, his regrets, and the choices he had made in life. He listened as she spoke of her ambitions, her struggles, and the moments that had tested her courage.
He admired her strength and resilience, realizing that the little girl he had once known had grown into a woman of remarkable character. He shared his own feelings, admitting the quiet loneliness that had sometimes accompanied his routine life, and the way he had often wondered about her. "I always thought about what life would have been like if we hadn't been separated," he said. "And now that you're here, I realize that some things were waiting for the right time." She reached out and touched his hand lightly. The gesture was simple, but it carried more meaning than words could convey. "Bets. Some things are meant to last," she said softly. "And some people are meant to find their way back to each other, no matter how long it takes." They continued walking toward the hills, where the wildflowers bloomed in abundance. The scent of jasmine and daisies filled the air, mingling with the earthy smell of the soil. Butterflies flitted from flower to flower, and the sound of birds singing added a serene melody to the scene. It felt as though the world around them had paused, allowing them to catch up on lost time and rediscover a connection that had never truly faded. At one point, they came across the old abandoned barn where they had once played as children. Its wooden planks were worn, and the paint had faded, but to them, it still held magic. They explored the barn together, laughing as they found remnants of their past adventures. A rope swing, an old tin can, and scribbled initials on a beam. Each discovery brought a wave of nostalgia and joy, reminding them of the carefree days they had once shared. Bay. Sitting on the floor of the barn, she leaned against the wooden wall and looked at him with a thoughtful expression. "I've always wondered," she said, "if life had given us more time together, would we have grown up differently? Would we have stayed close no matter what?" He considered her words carefully. "I think some things are meant to be," he said finally. Bration.
Even if we were apart, the bond we shared never really went away. It's still here, between us, waiting for the right moment to grow again.
Base. Her eyes softened, and she smiled. "I'm glad we have this moment now. It feels like we're making up for lost time." The cowboy smiled in return, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. He realized that their connection was not just about childhood memories, but about understanding, trust, and a shared sense of belonging. The years apart had shaped them, made them stronger, and now allowed them to appreciate each other more deeply than before. As the day turned into evening, they walked down a narrow trail leading to a hill that overlooked the town. The sun was beginning to set, casting a golden glow over the landscape and painting the sky in shades of orange, pink, and purple. The view was breathtaking, and they stood in silence, taking it all in. The cowboy felt a sense of peace and possibility, knowing that this reunion was more than a fleeting moment. It was a chance to explore what they had always meant to each other. "I've missed this," he admitted quietly. Breath. She turned to him, her eyes reflecting the colors of the sunset.
"I've missed you too," she said softly. "More than I realized." They stood there together, letting the silence speak for them, the memories, emotions, and unspoken words filling the space between them.
For the first time in years, they felt truly seen and understood. It was a feeling of warmth, hope, and quiet excitement, a promise that this reconnection was just the beginning of something new. Eventually, they made their way back to the town, walking slowly as the stars began to appear in the sky. The night air was cool and gentle, carrying the faint scent of pine and earth. Streetlights flickered on, casting soft pools of light on the cobblestone streets. The town, familiar and unchanged, now seemed infused with new meaning, a place of memories, reconnections, and possibilities. Before parting ways for the night, they stood at the edge of the town square, looking at each other with a mixture of hope and curiosity. There were still questions to answer, paths to explore, and emotions to navigate, but they both knew that this reconnection was real, meaningful, and worth pursuing.
"Tomorrow," she said, her voice gentle but determined, "let's meet again."
There's so much more I want to share with you and so much I want to know about your life. He nodded, smiling, feeling a quiet excitement he hadn't felt in years.
"I'll be here."
I don't want to miss another moment with you.
As they went their separate ways for the night, each walked with a lighter step and a heart full of hope.
The cowboy returned to his home, thinking about the moments they had shared, the laughter, the stories, and the unspoken understanding that had grown between them. He knew that the days ahead would be filled with questions, choices, and emotions, but he also knew that this reconnection was worth every uncertainty. That night, he lay awake, reflecting on the day. The memories of childhood and the joy of reunion mingled with anticipation for what was to come. Somewhere else she too thought of him, smiling at the thought of their shared past and imagining the future they could create together. Both of them, connected by time, distance, and memory, drifted into sleep, with hearts full of hope and minds filled with dreams of what might lie ahead.
Woke earlier than usual, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness.
Today was different. Today he would see her again, and there was a quiet hope in his heart that the connection they had rekindled could grow into something lasting. The sun rose slowly over the town, painting the sky in soft pastels, and for the first time in years, the cowboy felt a sense of anticipation that went beyond his daily routine. He saddled his horse carefully, checking the reins and stirrups, though his mind was only half on the task. Most of his attention was on the thought of her smile, the sound of her laughter, and the warmth of her hand in his. Bah! He remembered the stories they had shared, the old memories of their childhood, and the deep conversations of yesterday.
Every detail made him more aware of how much he had missed having her in his life.
When he arrived at their meeting place, the old town square, she was already there, standing under the shade of the large oak tree where they had often played as children. She looked radiant, the sunlight catching her hair and the gentle breeze lifting it slightly. Brr. Her eyes found his instantly, and that familiar warm smile spread across her face. The cowboy felt a rush of emotions, from joy to nervousness, but most of all, he felt a sense of certainty.
"Good morning," she said softly. "I was hoping you'd come early." "I wouldn't miss it for the world," he replied, his voice steady but filled with emotion.
"I've been looking forward to this all night." They walked together through the town, sharing small conversations at first about the shops that had opened, the faces that had changed, and the quiet comfort of the familiar streets. But soon, as they left the town behind and walked toward the fields and hills, the conversation grew deeper, more honest, and more revealing. She stopped and looked at him, her expression thoughtful. Bray.
I've been thinking, she said, about,
About how our lives have been so different, and yet here we are. Do you think it's possible for us to find a way together now? The cowboy took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words. He had spent years imagining what it might be like to see her again, but now that the moment had arrived, he realized how much courage it took to confront the feelings that had never truly gone away.
I've thought about it too, he said quietly.
and I think it's worth trying.
Bo. Life hasn't been easy, and we've had our own paths, but maybe now those paths can meet. Her eyes softened and she reached out to take his hand. Bet.
I don't want to waste another moment, she said. I've waited for this feeling for a long time. I want to see where it leads, without fear, without hesitation.
The cowboy felt a warmth spread through him, a sense of peace and excitement that he hadn't known in years. Holding her hand, he realized that some connections are timeless, that even when life separates people, the bond can survive and return stronger than ever. They continued walking, side by side, sharing their dreams, their fears, and their hopes for the future. She spoke of her life in the city, the career she had built, the friendships she had formed, and the challenges she had faced. The cowboy listened intently, amazed by her strength and resilience, and proud of the person she had become. He shared his life on the ranch, the hard work, the quiet moments of satisfaction, and the simple joys that made his life meaningful. Despite the differences in their experiences, they found common ground in their values, their love for family, and their appreciation for honesty and kindness.
As the afternoon sun began to warm the fields, they reached a hill that overlooked the town.
The view was breathtaking, rooftops and streets bathed in golden light, hills stretching into the distance, and the sky painted in shades of orange and pink. They sat on the grass, letting the quiet beauty of the moment speak for them.
I've missed this,
the cowboy said softly.
Not just you, but everything.
The connection, the understanding, the feeling that someone truly knows you. She nodded, her eyes glistening slightly. I've missed it too. I've missed you. And now I feel like we have a chance to make up for all the years we lost.
They spent the next few hours talking, sharing stories of their past, their struggles, and their dreams for the future.
They laughed over memories of childhood mischief, the games they had played, and the promises they had made.
They shared quiet moments, watching the sun slowly sink toward the horizon, feeling a sense of closeness and trust that only grew stronger with each passing minute.
As evening approached, the conversation turned toward the practicalities of life. She had responsibilities in the city, work, family, and commitments that could not be ignored. He had the ranch, the animals, and the routines that had shaped him for years. Yet neither of them wanted these realities to become obstacles.
They discussed ways to balance their lives, to spend time together, and to support each other's dreams. It won't be easy, he admitted.
There will be challenges, but I believe we can find a way. We've waited long enough. She squeezed his hand, gently.
I believe that too. We'll make it work, step by step.
We don't have to have all the answers today. We just have to be willing to try. The sun finally set, leaving a soft twilight glow over the town. Stars began to appear, twinkling in the clear night sky. The cowboy and his childhood love walked slowly back toward town, their hands intertwined, hearts filled with hope and anticipation. The world felt quiet, peaceful, and full of possibility. Before parting ways for the night, they stood under the large oak tree once more, looking into each other's eyes. "Tomorrow," she said softly, "let's meet again. Let's keep exploring this, see where it leads."
"I'll be here," he replied firmly, "and we'll face it together whatever comes our way." They shared a quiet moment, letting the connection between them settle like a warm fire in their hearts.
Bay. Then, with a gentle smile and a final wave, they went their separate ways, each feeling a sense of fulfillment and anticipation for the days ahead. That night, the cowboy lay awake, thinking about the day, the stories, the laughter, and the quiet moments of understanding. He realized that life had brought them back together for a reason, that some bonds are meant to endure, and that love, no matter how long it waits, can return with strength and clarity. She, too, lay awake, under the same starry sky, reflecting on the day. She thought of his kindness, his sincerity, and the way he had always understood her in a way no one else had. She smiled at the thought of their shared memories, the adventures they had, and the new memories they were beginning to create.
Over the next days, they met regularly, walking through the fields, exploring the town, and sharing stories and laughter.
With each meeting, their bond grew stronger, rooted in friendship, respect, and the deep affection they had always carried for each other. They faced small challenges together, scheduling visits, balancing responsibilities, and navigating the realities of adult life. But each obstacle only strengthened their connection. One afternoon, as they sat by the river where they had skipped stones as children, the cowboy turned to her, a serious but gentle expression on his face.
"I don't want to lose you again," he said softly.
"I want us to move forward, together." She reached for his hand, her eyes full of trust and love. "I don't want to lose you either," she replied. "I've waited a long time for this, and now that we have it, I'm not letting go." They sat in silence for a while, watching the water flow and the sunlight dance across the surface. The world felt peaceful, quiet, and safe, as if it were giving them its blessing. And in that moment, they both understood that their reunion was more than just a second chance. It was the beginning of a new chapter, built on shared memories, trust, and a love that had survived the test of time. As the sun began to set again, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange, pink, and purple, they walked back toward the town, side by side, hand in hand. There was no rush, no urgency, just the quiet joy of being together and the promise of what lay ahead. And the cowboy knew that life would continue to bring challenges, but he also knew that with her by his side, those challenges could be faced with courage, patience, and love. She knew the same, feeling a sense of security and hope that she hadn't felt in years. Together they had discovered that true connections never fade, that childhood love can survive the years, and that sometimes life's greatest surprises are the ones that bring people back to where they belong. And so, under the starry sky, with hearts full of hope and eyes looking toward the future, the cowboy and his childhood love began a journey together. It was a journey of rediscovery, of trust, and of building a life where their past, present, and future could coexist in harmony. They had found each other again. And this time, neither was willing to let go.